Single millionaire dad sees bride in wheelchair crying at the altar, hugs her and proposes. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome to Mr. Peter Stories. I'm so happy to have each and every one of you here today. This space is filled with love, passion, and stories that bring us all closer together. Your support means everything to me, and I'm beyond excited to share today's journey with you. Before we begin, let's take a moment to lift our hearts in prayer. Heavenly Father, bless this beautiful family and surround them with your love and protection. Guide their hearts and minds, filling them with peace and joy each day. Thank you for the gift of this community. May we grow stronger together in your grace. Amen. Now let's dive into today's story, and remember, the surprise is coming at the end. Stay tuned and let's share love and positivity together. The morning light filtered through threadbare curtains, casting harsh shadows across the small bedroom Ashley Gardner had called home for the past 12 years. At 18, she should have been excited about graduation, college, or whatever. Future lay ahead. Instead, she sat in her wheelchair by the window, watching her cousins laugh in the garden below, a world as inaccessible to her as the moon. Ashley. Her Aunt Meredith's shrill voice echoed up the stairs. "Those breakfast dishes won't wash themselves?" Ashley sighed, adjusting the worn shawl around her shoulders. "Coming, Aunt Meredith," she called back, her voice soft but steady. She maneuvered, her wheelchair with practiced ease, navigating the narrow hallway that her aunt had never bothered to widen, despite the obvious difficulty it presented. The chair had been a reluctant concession when Ashley's condition had progressed to the point where she could no longer stand without pain. The doctors had called it a degenerative spinal condition, something that might have been manageable with proper treatment. But Aunt Meredith had deemed such medical care an unnecessary expense for someone else's burden. Someone else's burden. The phrase had followed Ashley throughout her childhood, a constant reminder that she was unwanted, an obligation thrust upon her aunt when her parents' car skidded off an icy bridge one winter night. At 6 years old, Ashley had lost everything: her loving parents, her comfortable home, and eventually her ability to walk. As she wheeled into the kitchen, Ashley noticed her aunt sitting at the table, unusually still, an envelope clutched. In her manicured hands, her cousins Brianna and Melissa were conspicuously absent, though their breakfast dishes remained scattered across the table. "There you are, finally," Aunt Meredith said, not bothering to look up. "I was beginning to think you'd never come down. I'm sorry. It takes me a little longer in the mornings," Ashley replied, approaching the sink. She rolled up her sleeves, preparing to tackle the mountain of dishes. "Leave those," her aunt said sharply, surprising Ashley. In 12 years, she had never been excused from chores. "We need to talk." A cold dread settled in Ashley's stomach. "Is something wrong?" "Wrong? No." A smile that didn't reach her eyes crossed Aunt Meredith's face. "Actually, I've solved our little problem." Ashley's hands tightened on the armrests of her wheelchair. In her aunt's vocabulary, our little problem had always been Ashley herself. "Today is your 18th birthday," Aunt Meredith continued. Ashley blinked in surprise. She'd almost forgotten. There had never been celebrations, no cakes or presents. After a few years, she'd stopped expecting acknowledgement, which means, her aunt continued, sliding the envelope across the table, "my legal obligation to you is officially over." The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Ashley cautiously took the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened it. Inside was a simple document, a marriage certificate with her name printed neatly beside a man's she didn't recognize. Jackson Reed. I don't understand," she whispered, looking up at her aunt in confusion. "It's quite simple, really." Aunt Meredith's voice was businesslike. "Jackson Reed is looking for a wife. He's willing to take you off my hands. The arrangement is beneficial for everyone." "Beneficial?" Ashley's voice cracked. "Aunt Meredith, I don't even know this man. He comes from the Reed family in Westwood. They own that gambling establishment near the highway." Her aunt waved a dismissive hand. "He's agreed to the arrangement for $5,000. Quite a bargain considering your condition." The casual cruelty of being sold like an unwanted possession made Ashley's chest tighten. "You're selling me." "Don't be so dramatic," her aunt scoffed. "I'm securing your future. What did you think would happen when you turned 18? That you'd stay here indefinitely, a burden on this family's resources? Who would want to marry a girl in a wheelchair unless there was compensation involved?" Each word was a knife, expertly wielded to strike Ashley's deepest insecurities. Despite her best efforts, tears welled in her eyes. "Jackson will be here tomorrow to finalize the arrangements," Aunt Meredith continued, rising from the table. "The wedding is scheduled for next Saturday. Don't worry about a dress. I've arranged something suitable." "Next Saturday?" Ashley's voice was barely audible. "That's only 10 days away." He was quite eager to expedite matters. A thin smile. "I suspect he needs the tax deduction." Left alone in the kitchen, Ashley felt the walls closing in. Her fingers traced the cold metal of her wheelchair's frame, the chair that had become both her prison and her freedom. Outside, she could hear her cousin's laughter floating through the open window, carefree and unconcerned with her fate. For a fleeting moment, Ashley considered refusing, running away. But the reality of her situation crashed down like a physical weight. Where would she go? How would she survive? She had no money, no education beyond high school, and no friends outside the restrictive boundaries her aunt had established. That night, in the privacy of her small room, Ashley allowed herself to weep, not just for the future being forced upon her, but for the childhood she'd lost. She pulled out the only photograph she had of her parents, their faces forever frozen in happiness as they held a small, dark-haired girl between them. The girl was standing, her tiny hand trustingly placed in her father's larger one. "What should I do?" she whispered to the photograph, her tears falling onto the protective plastic covering. No answer came, only the distant sound of her aunt's television drifting up the stairs. Over the next week, preparations for the wedding proceeded with cold efficiency. Ashley met Jackson Reed only once before the ceremony. A hurried introduction during which he barely looked at her, his bloodshot, eyes assessing her body with detached interest before nodding his approval to Aunt Meredith. He smelled of whiskey and cigarettes, even at 11 in the morning. The night before the wedding, Ashley sat by her window, staring at the stars scattered across the velvet sky. For years, she had dreamed of escape, of finding someone who would see beyond her wheelchair to the person inside. Now, she was exchanging one prison for another, with no guarantee that the new one would be any less cruel. Yet, as dawn broke on her wedding day, Ashley made a silent promise to herself. This might be the path chosen for her, but she would walk it or wheel it with dignity. Whatever awaited her in Jackson Reed's home, she would face it with the quiet strength that had sustained her through 12 years of her aunt's coldness. What Ashley couldn't know, as she buttoned the simple white dress her aunt had grudgingly provided, was that fate had different plans. Plans that would begin unfolding in a small church, where a stranger named Raphael Luca would witness her humiliation and, in doing so, change the course of both their lives forever. Chapter 2. The Wedding Day. Humiliation. The small church on Maple Street looked almost pretty in the morning light, its weathered steeple reaching toward a cloudless blue sky. Inside, however, the atmosphere was as cold as a January frost. Ashley sat in her wheelchair at the front of the nearly empty sanctuary, her hands folded tightly in her lap to hide their trembling. The hastily arranged ceremony had attracted few guests, mostly her aunt's friends, who had come out of morbid curiosity rather than celebration. Whispers followed Ashley like shadows as the church organist played a half-hearted rendition of the wedding march. She caught fragments of conversations. "Ah, poor crippled thing. And can't imagine why he'd agree to marry her." Aunt Meredith had dressed Ashley in a simple white dress from a second-hand shop, claiming it would be wasteful to spend money on something fancier, given the circumstances. The dress was ill-fitting, hanging loosely from her slender frame. But Ashley had spent the previous night carefully steaming out the wrinkles and adding a ribbon belt to give it some shape. She had even managed to arrange her dark curls into an elegant updo, adorned with small white flowers gathered from her aunt's garden. Despite everything, Ashley was determined to maintain some dignity on this day that should have been a celebration of love, but instead felt like a business transaction. "He's late," Aunt Meredith hissed, checking her watch for the third time in 10 minutes. She stood beside Ashley's wheelchair, her grey suit severe and her expression even more so. Typical. Read behavior. No sense of propriety. The church doors suddenly burst open with a bang that made several guests jump. Jackson Reed staggered in, his tie askew and his eyes glazed. Even from the front of the church, Ashley could smell the alcohol emanating from him. Her heart sank further, if that was possible. "Sorry, folks," he called out, his voice too loud for the small space. "Lost track of time. Let's get this show on the road, shall we?" Pastor Wilson, a thin man with kind eyes, who had known Ashley since childhood, approached her wheelchair and bent down. "We don't have to proceed, my dear," he whispered, concern etched on his weathered face. "I can find a way to help you if you need an escape." For a brief moment, hope fluttered in Ashley's chest, but then she caught her aunt's glacial stare and saw the underlying threat. Where would she go? What would she do? She had no money, no job prospects, and no friends who could take her in. "It's fine, Pastor," she whispered back, forcing a smile. "Please continue." The ceremony was mercifully brief. Jackson swayed slightly as he repeated his vows, his words slurred. When Pastor Wilson asked for the rings, Jackson patted his pockets with exaggerated movements before producing a thin gold band that looked suspiciously like it had been purchased from a pawn shop that morning. Ashley's hand trembled as Jackson roughly shoved the ring onto her finger. It was too large, spinning loosely. A perfect metaphor, she thought bitterly, for this ill-fitting marriage. "You may kiss the bride," Pastor Wilson said, his voice carrying a note of resignation. Jackson bent down, his breath reeking of whiskey, and pressed his lips clumsily against hers. Ashley remained still, fighting the urge to turn away. The small reception was held in the church basement. A few folding tables covered with paper tablecloths, grocery store cake, and punch that Jackson immediately spiked with a flask from his jacket pocket. As guests awkwardly milled about, Ashley sat in a corner, feeling invisible despite being the supposed center of attention. "Quite a catch, aren't I?" Jackson's voice startled her as he dropped into a chair beside her wheelchair, sloshing punch onto the floor. "Bet you never thought you'd land a husband, wheelchair and all." Ashley remained silent, her eyes fixed on the untouched cake on her plate. "Not much of a talker, are you?" He chuckled, draining his cup. "That's good. Can't stand chatty women." He glanced around the room with obvious distaste. "This is pathetic. Luckily, I've invited some of my friends to liven things up. They should be here soon." As if on cue, the basement door opened, and a group of rowdy men entered, bringing with them the noise and atmosphere of a bar rather than a wedding reception. Aunt Meredith's pinched expression grew even tighter, but she said nothing as the men clapped Jackson on the back and made themselves at home. One of them, a tall man with a neatly trimmed beard and expensive suit that stood out among Jackson's rumpled friends, remained by the door. Unlike the others, he wasn't laughing or reaching for the punch. Instead, his eyes, a deep blue that reminded Ashley of the ocean in her childhood picture books, surveyed the scene with poorly concealed distaste. "Who's that?" Ashley asked quietly, nodding toward the stranger. Jackson followed her gaze and frowned. Raphael Luca, some hotshot tech millionaire. My cousin works for his company and dragged him along. Probably thinks he's too good for us. He stood up suddenly. I need another drink. As the hours crawled by, the reception deteriorated. Further, Jackson became increasingly intoxicated, his friends matching him drink for drink. The few respectable guests, including Pastor Wilson, made polite excuses and departed, leaving Ashley increasingly isolated in her corner. She was contemplating whether anyone would notice if she slipped out when Jackson's voice rose above the general clamor. "Attention, attention, everyone!" He climbed unsteadily onto a chair, swaying dangerously. "I have an announcement to make." The room quieted, all eyes turning to the drunken groom. Ashley felt a knot of dread form in her stomach. "As you all know," Jackson continued, gesturing wildly with his cup, "I got married today to this lovely—" He paused, looking down at Ashley with a sneer. "Wheelchair-bound bride. But here's the funny part. She wasn't free." A confused murmur rippled through the room. "That's right. Her dear auntie charged me $5,000 to take her off their hands." Jackson laughed uproariously, as though he'd told the most hilarious joke. $5,000 for damaged goods. Ashley felt the blood drain from her face. The humiliation was so complete, so devastating, that for a moment she couldn't breathe. Around her, Jackson's friends erupted in raucous laughter. "But I'm feeling generous today," Jackson continued, raising his cup. "So I'm making an offer, $10,000. That's right, double what I paid. Any takers for my lovely bride?" The room fell into a shocked silence. Even Jackson's drunken friends seemed uncomfortable with this new level of cruelty. From his position by the wall, Raphael Luca stepped forward, his expression thunderous. "That's enough," he said, his voice quiet, but carrying a steely authority that cut through the room. "You're embarrassing yourself and humiliating your wife." Jackson's face contorted with rage. "Who the hell do you think you are, Luca? This is my wedding." "A wedding is supposed to be a celebration of love and commitment," Raphael replied evenly. "Not whatever this is." He gestured around the room. "I think it's time you showed your wife some respect." "Respect?" Jackson spat, climbing down from the chair and approaching Raphael with an unsteady gait. "Why should I respect what I paid for? For all I know, she's been sleeping with men like you behind my back." Before anyone could react, Jackson turned and struck Ashley across the face, the blow nearly knocking her from her wheelchair. "Have you been whoring around with rich boys like Luca?" Ashley's hand flew to her stinging cheek, tears of pain and shock filling her eyes. "I never even met this man before," she cried, her voice breaking. In the stunned silence that followed, Jackson seemed to realize he had crossed a line. He looked around at the horrified faces, then at Ashley's reddening cheek, and something like shame flickered across his features. Without another word, he staggered toward the exit, pausing only to grab a bottle from the refreshment table before slamming the door behind him. His friends shuffled awkwardly, muttering excuses before following him out, until only Aunt Meredith, a few of her friends, and Raphael Luca remained in the suddenly cavernous basement. "Well," Aunt Meredith said after a moment, smoothing her already immaculate suit, "I suppose that concludes the festivities. Ashley, we should get you home to pack your things. I'm sure Mr. Reed will return once he's calmed down." "You can't be serious," Raphael interjected, his voice tight with controlled anger. "After what just happened, you expect her to go with that man?" Aunt Meredith turned her cold gaze to him. "This is a family matter, Mr. Luca. I appreciate your concern, but Ashley is now Mrs. Reed, for better or worse." "It's okay," Ashley said quietly, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. "Please just leave me alone for a moment." Reluctantly, Aunt Meredith and her remaining friends moved to the other side of the room, whispering furiously among themselves. Ashley sat in her wheelchair, surrounded by the ruins of what should have been the start of a new chapter in her life, wondering how it had become the most humiliating day instead. She didn't notice Rafael Luca watching her from across the room, his blue eyes filled with a mixture of compassion and quiet determination, or the small boy who had appeared at his side, tugging at his jacket with curious questions about the sad lady in the white dress. Chapter 3. An Unexpected Savior. Church basement emptied rapidly after Jackson's dramatic exit. Even Aunt Meredith, after several failed attempts to discuss next steps, had departed with pinched lips and a warning that Ashley shouldn't expect to return to her home. "You're Jackson's responsibility now," she'd said coldly, before clicking away in her sensible heels. Now, as the afternoon light slanted through the high basement windows, Ashley sat alone in her wheelchair, surrounded by the debris of paper plates and plastic cups. The weight of her situation pressed down on her chest like a physical force. No home, no husband, not that she mourned Jackson's absence, and nowhere to go. The irony of wearing a wedding dress while feeling utterly abandoned wasn't lost on her. "Excuse me," a deep voice said softly. Ashley looked up, hastily wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. The well-dressed stranger, Rafael Luca, stood before her, a crisp white handkerchief extended in his hand. In the quieter setting, she noticed details she'd missed before. The fine lines at the corners of his deep blue eyes suggesting both laughter and concern, the carefully trimmed beard framing a strong jawline, the air of quiet confidence that seemed to surround him. "Thank you," she murmured, accepting the handkerchief with trembling fingers. "No one deserves to be treated that way," he said gently, kneeling to meet her at eye level, a gesture so simple yet so profound that Ashley felt fresh tears threatening. Few people bothered to kneel when speaking to her. Most preferred to tower above, reinforcing her physical disadvantage. The setting sun through the stained glass windows cast a kaleidoscope of colors across her tear-stained face, momentarily distracting her from her distress. "It's getting late," she observed, folding the handkerchief carefully. "You don't need to stay. I'm sure you have better places to be than a failed wedding reception." "Actually," Raphael replied, his voice gentle but firm, "I'm exactly where I need to be. When I see someone in trouble, I don't walk away." A small boy, perhaps 6 or 7 years old, appeared from behind a nearby table. He approached cautiously, his curious eyes darting between Ashley and Raphael. "Dad," he whispered loudly, "is the pretty lady okay?" Raphael smiled, beckoning the child closer. "Ashley, this is my son, Liam. Liam, this is Mrs. Gardner." "It's nice to meet you, Liam," Ashley said, summoning a smile despite her circumstances. Children had always been a soft spot for her, perhaps because they tended to see beyond her. Wheelchair, with an acceptance adults rarely managed. "Why are you sad?" Liam asked directly, edging closer to her wheelchair. "And why did that mean man yell at you?" "Liam," Raphael admonished gently, "remember what we discussed about personal questions." The unexpected kindness from this small stranger broke through Ashley's carefully maintained composure. A sob escaped her as she accepted the treat with a whispered, "Thank you." Raphael watched the interaction with a mixture of pride and something deeper. "Ms. Gardner," he said after a moment, "I couldn't help but overhear your aunt. Do you have somewhere to go tonight?" Ashley's silence was answer enough. "I have a proposition," he continued carefully. "I own a property outside of town. There's a guest house that's fully accessible. It's yours for as long as you need while you figure out your next steps." Ashley stared at him, searching for the catch. Experience had taught her that offers, too good to be true, usually were. "Why would you help a stranger?" she asked, wariness evident in her voice. Raphael glanced at his son, who was now investigating the abandoned wedding cake with great interest. Because teaching kindness is more important than explaining cruelty, he replied simply. And because I was raised to believe that privilege comes with responsibility, not just to write checks for causes, but to directly help when the opportunity arises. I need time, Ashley whispered, looking up at him with uncertainty etched across her delicate features. The offer was tempting, almost desperately so, but she had just escaped one situation with a strange man. Caution seemed wise. Time is something I can give, Raphael responded with a warm smile that reached his eyes. The guest house is available whenever you're ready. No strings, no expectations. As Ashley considered his offer, Liam returned, his small face serious. Dad and I make really good pancakes, he informed her earnestly, and we have ramps everywhere because Grandma uses a walker sometimes. You could come for breakfast, even if you don't want to stay. Raphael suppressed a smile at his son's transparent attempt to sway their guest. Liam's pancakes are indeed exceptional, he confirmed with mock solemnity. Blueberry is his specialty. For the first time that day, perhaps the first time in weeks, Ashley felt a genuine smile touch her lips. There was something about this father and son that cut through her well-honed defenses. Maybe it was the way Raphael spoke to her as an equal, or how Liam saw her as a person first and her wheelchair second. How can I be sure you're not? She hesitated, unsure how to phrase her concerns with Liam present. A villain in disguise. Raphael finished for her, understanding evident in his expression. He reached into his jacket and produced a business card, sliding it into her hand. The embossed logo of Luca Technologies was instantly recognizable, one of the largest tech companies in the region. I'm reasonably well known in the community. You're welcome to research me before deciding. And I'll give you my mother's number. She'd be delighted to vouch for me, though she'll probably tell embarrassing childhood stories in the process. The tension in Ashley's shoulders eased fractionally. You've thought of everything. Not everything, he admitted, running a hand through his dark hair. I have no idea how to salvage this day for you or erase what happened. All I can offer is a safe place to land while you regroup. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by Liam's quiet humming as he collected discarded napkins and placed them in a nearby trash can, apparently taking it upon himself to clean up. Okay, Ashley finally said, her voice steady, despite her uncertainty. I'll come with you. For tonight, at least. Raphael nodded, careful not to appear too eager or relieved. Do you have belongings you need to collect? Just a small suitcase at my aunt's house, she replied, the reminder of her meager possessions bringing a fresh wave of reality. But I'd rather not go back there now. We can arrange to pick them up tomorrow, Raphael assured her. For tonight we'll manage. As he moved behind her wheelchair, his hands hovering near the handles, he paused. May I? He asked, a simple question that acknowledged her autonomy in a way few had bothered with before. Ashley nodded, surprised and touched by his sensitivity. As Raphael guided her wheelchair out of the church basement, Liam skipping ahead to hold doors open, Ashley felt the weight of stares from the few remaining church staff. But she also felt the protective presence of this stranger who had somehow appeared at her lowest moment. The sunlight outside was blinding after the dim basement, symbolic in a way she wasn't ready to analyze. My car is adapted for wheelchair transport, Raphael mentioned as they approached a sleek black SUV. My mother sometimes stays with us, and mobility has become an issue for her in recent years. The careful way he helped her transfer from wheelchair to vehicle seat, the respectful distance he maintained while ensuring her comfort. These small considerations spoke volumes about the man Raphael Luca was. As they drove away from the church, leaving behind the wreckage of what should have been a new beginning, Ashley gazed out the window at the passing scenery. She had no idea what awaited her at Raphael's home, But for the first time in years, uncertainty felt less like fear and more like possibility. From the front seat, Liam twisted around to look at her, his small face alight with excitement. "We have a dog named Bruno," he informed her solemnly. "He's really big, but super gentle. Dad says he's a marshmallow in a bear costume." Despite everything, Ashley felt a laugh bubble up from somewhere deep inside her, a rusty sound, unpracticed but genuine. In the rearview mirror, she caught Raphael's eyes briefly. The corners crinkled in a smile that somehow promised this day, terrible as it had been, wasn't the end of her story, but perhaps, improbably, the beginning of something entirely new. Chapter 4. A New Beginning. Raphael's estate proved to be a breathtaking property nestled on 10 acres of landscaped grounds outside the city limits. As they drove through wrought iron gates and up a winding drive bordered with stately oaks, Ashley's stomach tightened with anxiety. This world of wealth and privilege was as foreign to her as another planet. Jackson had called Raphael a tech millionaire, but seeing the reality of his status made her painfully aware of the gulf between them. The main house was a modern architectural marvel of glass and stone, its clean lines somehow complementing rather than competing with the natural landscape. To its right stood a smaller structure with the same elegant design, connected to the main house by a covered walkway. "That's the guest house," Raphael explained, catching her wide-eyed gaze. "My mother designed it when her mobility began declining. She insisted on creating a space where she could maintain her independence when visiting." As the SUV stopped at the entrance, a massive golden retriever bounded toward them, his excited barks filling the air. "Bruno!" Liam squealed, scrambling out of his seatbelt. "Dad, can I take him to the backyard while you help Miss Gardner?" "Good idea," Raphael agreed, watching fondly as his son and dog raced around the circular driveway. Turning to Ashley, he added, "Bruno is enthusiastic but well-trained. He'll calm down once he's gotten the initial excitement out of his system." Ashley nodded, trying to absorb the reality of her situation. Hours ago, she had been preparing to begin life as Jackson Reed's wife. Now she was at the home of a stranger who appeared to have stepped from the pages of a fairy tale, complete with mansion, adorable child, and friendly dog. "I should change," she said suddenly, looking down at her wedding dress. "This isn't exactly everyday attire." "Of course," Raphael replied, understanding immediately. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Hendricks, can help you find something comfortable. She's about your size, though perhaps a bit taller." With practiced ease, he helped her transfer back to her wheelchair, his movements efficient without being clinical. Ashley appreciated his ability to assist without making her feel helpless, a delicate balance few managed. Mrs. Hendricks proved to be a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and capable hands. She welcomed Ashley without a hint of the pity or awkwardness strangers often displayed, instead treating her with a matter-of-fact warmth that put her instantly at ease. "Mr. Luca called ahead," she explained, leading Ashley into the guest house. "I've prepared some essentials for you, nothing fancy but clean and comfortable." The guest house exceeded every expectation. Designed with accessibility in mind, it featured wide doorways, smooth transitions between rooms, and a layout that allowed for easy navigation by wheelchair. The furnishings were elegant yet practical, with surfaces at varied heights and carefully placed grab bars that somehow looked like design elements rather than medical necessities. "The bathroom is fully equipped," Mrs. Hendricks pointed out, showing Ashley the roll-in shower with a built-in bench, the raised toilet with stylish handrails, and the lowered sink. "And I've laid out toiletries, pajamas, and a change of clothes." In the bedroom, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness, Ashley felt tears threatening again. "Thank you," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. "This is more than I could have imagined." Mrs. Hendricks patted her shoulder gently. Get cleaned up, dear. I'll have dinner ready in the main house whenever you're feeling up to it. No pressure, though. I can bring a tray here if you'd prefer. Left alone, Ashley took advantage of the luxurious bathroom, shedding her wedding dress with a mixture of relief and melancholy. Under the rainfall shower, she allowed herself to cry one last time, for the childhood she'd lost, for the betrayal of being sold by her aunt, for the humiliation of being abandoned at the altar. Then, as the hot water sluiced away her tears, she made a silent vow. This was the beginning of something new. No more being a victim. Dressed in borrowed yoga pants and a soft sweater, her damp curls framing her face, Ashley felt more like herself than she had in weeks. She explored the guest house, marveling at details she hadn't initially noticed. The shelves within easy reach, the specially designed kitchen with lowered countertops and pull-out workspace, the cozy reading nook with a view of what appeared to be a Japanese-inspired garden. A knock at the door interrupted her exploration. "Coming!" she called, wheeling across the smooth hardwood floor. Raphael stood outside, having changed from his suit into casual clothes, jeans and a navy sweater that brought out the blue of his eyes. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," he said. "Not at all," she assured him, suddenly aware of her borrowed clothes and bare face. "I was just admiring your guest house. It's remarkable." "My mother is a formidable advocate for accessible design," he explained with a smile. "She insisted that accessibility could be beautiful rather than clinical. I'm glad it meets with your approval." A comfortable silence fell between them, interrupted by the distant sound of Liam's laughter from somewhere in the garden. "Mrs. Hendricks mentioned dinner," Raphael continued. "It's nothing formal, just pasta with her famous garlic bread. Liam is exceedingly hopeful that you'll join us, but I understand if you'd prefer to rest." The thought of formal dining at a table, with strangers after everything she'd experienced, was daunting, but the genuine warmth in Raphael's invitation overrode Ashley's instinct to withdraw. "I'd love to join you," she replied. The main house was as thoughtfully designed as the guest house, with subtle accessibility features integrated seamlessly throughout. The dining room featured a table that accommodated her wheelchair perfectly, as if it had been designed with that specific purpose. Dinner proved to be a surprisingly relaxed affair. Liam dominated the conversation with enthusiastic stories about school, Bruno's antics, and his latest obsession with astronomy. His innocent acceptance of Ashley's presence, as if having a wedding day refugee at dinner was perfectly normal, gradually eased her tension. "Do you like stars?" Liam asked her earnestly between bites of spaghetti. "I do," Ashley responded with a smile, "though I don't know much about them." "I can teach you," he exclaimed, eyes brightening. "Dad got me a telescope for my birthday, and we can see lots of constellations from our backyard because we don't have city lights." "Liam," Raphael intervened gently, "Miss Gardner might not be up for stargazing tonight. Remember what we discussed about pressure and choices?" Ashley watched their interaction, impressed by the way Raphael guided his son without stifling his enthusiasm. "Maybe another night," she suggested, not wanting to disappoint the boy. "I'd love to learn about constellations." Liam beamed immediately, launching into detailed descriptions of Orion, the Big Dipper, and something called the Pleiades that apparently looked like a tiny shopping cart in the sky. As the days passed, Ashley gradually settled into a routine at the Luca household. Raphael insisted she stay as long as necessary, and with nowhere else to go, she gratefully accepted. Her few belongings were collected from her aunt's house by Mrs. Hendricks, who reported with grim satisfaction that Meredith Gardner had seemed distinctly uncomfortable with the Luca family's involvement. A week after her arrival, Ashley remained cautious, torn between gratitude for Raphael's generosity and fear of becoming dependent on another's charity. The morning she ventured into the main house kitchen, she found Liam struggling to reach cereal on a high shelf. "Here, let me help," she offered, navigating her chair beneath the cabinet. Though she couldn't stand, her seated height was perfect for reaching the middle shelves that Liam couldn't quite manage. "Thanks," he said cheerfully, accepting the cereal box. "Do you want some? I can get bowls." "I should get back to the guest house," Ashley replied automatically, the instinct to keep her distance still strong. Then, seeing disappointment flash across the boy's face, she softened. "But maybe I could join you just this once." They were eating together at the kitchen island when Raphael entered, already dressed for work, in a crisp button-down and tailored pants. He stopped short at the sight of them, something indefinable crossing his features. "Good morning," he said, recovering quickly. "I see you two have breakfast under control." "Ashley helped me reach the Cheerios," Liam explained through a mouthful of cereal, "and I poured the milk without spilling." "Impressive teamwork," Raphael commented, pouring himself coffee. His eyes met Ashley's over Liam's head, conveying silent gratitude. As days passed, Ashley struggled with her place in the household. Was she a guest, a charity case, something more? The uncertainty created an underlying tension that manifested in small ways, hesitating before entering rooms, apologizing for using household items, retreating to the guest house at the slightest hint of being unwelcome. One afternoon, she overheard Mrs. Hendricks speaking to Raphael in hushed tones. "The poor dear acts like she might be shown the door any minute," the housekeeper observed, "always trying to make herself useful, like she needs to earn her keep." "She's been through a lot," Raphael replied, his voice carrying concern. "We need to give her time." The conversation left Ashley feeling exposed and embarrassed, yet she couldn't deny the truth in it. Her aunt's conditional tolerance had taught her that belonging always came with a price. Nevertheless, she gradually began, helping Liam with his homework while Raphael worked. Her background in literature, a passion maintained through library books during her isolated years, provided structure to her afternoons and a sense of contribution. The library became her favorite room in the main house, a two-story space, with floor-to-ceiling shelves and a rolling ladder system that allowed her to access books independently. One rainy afternoon, Raphael found her there, her wheelchair positioned by the window as she organized a section of classics that had fallen into disarray. "Your library lacked a proper system," she explained, embarrassed at being caught. "I hope you don't mind. I was going a bit stir-crazy with the rain." Instead of objecting, Raphael sat across from her, their knees almost touching. "Show me your system," he said with genuine interest. They spent hours talking about favorite books. Raphael, pulling down volumes from higher shelves she couldn't reach. When their hands brushed during an exchange of a leather-bound Dickens, neither pulled away immediately. The momentary contact sent an unexpected warmth through Ashley's fingers, up her arm, and straight to her heart. That night, Raphael left, a stack of his favorite novels outside her door, with a note, "For the librarian who brings order to chaos. Your insights today made me see old favorites through new eyes." The gesture touched her deeply. Not just the books themselves, but the recognition of her intelligence and perspective. In her aunt's home, and during her brief engagement to Jackson, Ashley's thoughts and feelings had been consistently dismissed or ignored. Raphael, by contrast, seemed genuinely interested in her opinions. One morning, Ashley decided to prepare breakfast as a small gesture of thanks for the hospitality she'd received. She had been an accomplished cook before her aunts. Impatience and criticism had robbed the activity of joy. The kitchen in the guest house was perfectly designed for her seated height, allowing her to work with minimal difficulty. Halfway through mixing pancake batter, she heard the connecting door open. Raphael appeared, looking surprised to find her. "Cooking. You're our guest, not our help," he said, though his tone held no reproach. "Contributing makes me feel like I belong somewhere, even temporarily," she replied, focusing on the batter to avoid his gaze. The word temporarily hung between them, neither willing to acknowledge how permanent her presence already felt in their lives. Raphael was silent for a moment, then rolled up his sleeves. "In that case," he said lightly, "may I assist the chef? Liam claims my blueberry to pancake ratio is scientifically perfect." Side by side they worked, moving around the kitchen in a dance that felt surprisingly natural. When Liam joined them, still pajama-clad and sleepy-eyed, his delight at finding both adults preparing breakfast created a moment of domestic harmony that none of them acknowledged, but all felt deeply. As they ate together, morning sunlight streaming through the windows and conversation flowing easily, Ashley caught herself thinking dangerous thoughts about belonging, about family, about the possibility of happiness she'd never dared imagine. She tamped down the feelings quickly. This arrangement was temporary, she reminded herself firmly, a safe harbor, not a permanent home. Yet watching Raphael help Liam with his napkin, laughing at the boy's syrup-covered chin, she couldn't quite silence the small voice inside that whispered, "What if?" Chapter 5. Falling. 3 weeks into her stay at the Luca estate, a registered letter arrived addressed to Ashley. She recognized the law firm's name embossed on the envelope, the same firm that had handled her parents' estate after their deaths. With trembling fingers, she opened it to find divorce papers from Jackson Reed, citing irreconcilable differences. A brief note from the attorney explained that Mr. Reed was waiving any claims to marital property and requesting no contact. "Are you okay?" Raphael asked, finding Ashley staring at the documents in the garden. "Jackson wants a divorce," she explained, surprised by her own lack of emotion. "The man who abandoned me at the altar now wants legal closure." Raphael sat beside her, careful to give her space. "Is that upsetting?" "It's liberating," she replied after consideration. "The last legal tie to my old life, severed. I just never expected him to be the one to initiate it." The incident provided unexpected closure to a chapter Ashley had tried to forget. With Jackson legally removed from her future, she established a new routine. Mornings were spent in the guest house, working on freelance editing jobs Raphael had connected her with. Afternoons involved helping Liam with homework, followed by dinner with the Luca family. Though the arrangement felt increasingly natural, Ashley reminded herself daily of its temporary nature. On a bright Tuesday afternoon, Raphael was working from his home office when a crash from the kitchen shattered the quiet. He immediately recognized the sound of metal hitting tile, Ashley's wheelchair. He found her on the floor beside her overturned chair, attempting to clean a spilled pitcher of lemonade. The yellow liquid spread across the white tiles, creating a hazard that had likely caused her fall. "Ashley!" Raphael rushed forward, his heart constricting at the sight of her vulnerability, despite her evident determination to handle the situation herself. "I'm fine," she insisted, though her trembling hands betrayed her. "Just clumsy. The pitcher slipped, and when I tried to catch it—" She gestured helplessly at the wet floor and her position. Without hesitation, Raphael knelt beside her. "Let me help," he said softly, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm not a child," she whispered, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "I've taken care of myself for years." "There's strength in accepting help," he replied, gently sliding one arm under her knees and another around her shoulders. As he lifted her, her arms instinctively wrapped around his neck, bringing their faces unexpectedly close. The scent of her jasmine shampoo filled his senses as he carefully held her. He was shocked by how natural it felt to have her in his arms, how perfectly she seemed to fit against his chest. Their eyes met, and for a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them. "You don't need to clean here," he said, his hands lingering on the armrests, after setting her back in her righted wheelchair. "Old habits," she whispered back, momentarily lost in his concerned gaze. The warmth of his hands so close to hers made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with her fall. Raphael gently brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingertips grazing her cheek. "You're beautiful," he said suddenly, then looked surprised at his own admission. A charged silence filled the space between them, broken only when Bruno padded into the kitchen, his nails clicking on the tile as he investigated the spilled lemonade. That evening, Raphael called a family meeting in the living room. Liam perched on the sofa arm, while Ashley positioned her wheelchair across from them. "I have something important to discuss," Raphael began, his expression serious. "Ashley, this house is your home for as long as you want it, but please, no more housework. You're family now, not staff." The word family brought tears to her eyes, a concept so foreign yet desperately missed. She opened her mouth to protest, but Liam interrupted. "Does this mean Ashley's staying forever?" he asked, hope evident in his voice. Raphael glanced at Ashley, his expression softening. "That's entirely up to Ashley, but she has a place here for as long as she wishes." The genuine sincerity in his voice rendered Ashley momentarily speechless. No one had ever offered her unconditional belonging before. Later that week, Ashley noticed specialized equipment appearing around the house, additional ramps, lower shelves in the pantry, and modified kitchen tools, all thoughtfully installed to make her life easier. When she found Raphael supervising the installation of a wheelchair-accessible garden path, complete with raised flower beds she could tend, from her seated position she wheeled over to him. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked, genuinely puzzled by the extent of his consideration. "Because your mobility challenges don't define what you can enjoy," he answered, taking her hand in his calloused one. "And because I enjoy watching you discover new freedoms." That evening, they watched the sunset from the new garden path, her wheelchair beside his bench, their hands occasionally brushing as they pointed out colorful clouds. Neither mentioned how perfectly their fingers would intertwine if they just admitted what they both were beginning to feel. As twilight deepened, Raphael turned to face her directly. "Ashley, I need to ask you something," he said, his voice serious. "Are you truly safe here? There's been no word from Jackson since the wedding, but I want to ensure he can't legally claim any rights over you." The mention of Jackson's name jarred Ashley from the comfortable bubble they'd created. "The marriage was never consummated," she said quietly, "and he left before signing the official license. The pastor confirmed it's not legally binding." Relief visibly washed over Raphael's features. "I've had my legal team looking into it, just to be certain. They recommend filing for an annulment to clear any potential complications." The practical conversation should have broken the spell of the evening, but somehow it only strengthened the connection between them. Raphael's concern for her well-being, his attention to details that affected her future security, these were expressions of care far more meaningful than grand romantic gestures. As stars began appearing overhead, Liam called from the house that his bedtime story was waiting. Raphael stood, stretching slightly, then paused behind Ashley's wheelchair. "May I?" he asked, his hands hovering near the handles. Her quiet yes contained multitudes, permission to push her chair, but perhaps something more. As they moved together through the garden toward the warmly lit house, Ashley realized with startling clarity that she was falling for this man whose thoughtfulness manifested in both grand gestures and small considerations. The realization terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. What she couldn't know was that Raphael, watching her profile in the gentle glow of the garden lights, was experiencing the same revelation about his feelings for the brave, resilient woman who had unexpectedly transformed his life and his son's in just a few short weeks. Chapter 6. The sun's question as autumn painted the landscape in fiery hues. The rhythm of life at the Luca estate settled into a comfortable pattern. Ashley had been there for nearly 2 months, And while she still occupied the guest house, she spent most of her waking hours in the main house with Raphael and Liam. Her freelance editing work had grown steadily, giving her a sense of independence she cherished. The transformation in the household was subtle but undeniable. Laughter, once rare in the years following Sophia's death, now echoed through rooms that had held too much silence. Meals became lingering affairs filled with conversation, rather than efficient necessities. Even Bruno seemed more animated, dividing his loyalty between Liam and Ashley with enthusiastic impartiality. One crisp Saturday, Raphael found Ashley and Liam in the backyard, his son riding his bike in wide circles around Ashley's wheelchair. As she called out encouraging words, the sight made him pause by the kitchen window, coffee mug suspended halfway to his lips. There was something so right about the scene, something that filled a hollow space in his chest he'd grown accustomed to ignoring. Later that day, rain clouds gathered, bringing an early dusk. Liam, ever resourceful, declared it perfect weather for an indoor adventure. "Can we build a fort?" he asked, eyes bright with anticipation. "Please, Dad. Ashley's never built one before." "Is that true?" Raphael asked, turning to Ashley with exaggerated disbelief. "A childhood without blanket forts?" She smiled, though a shadow flickered across her features. "My aunt wasn't exactly the fort-building type." That was all the confirmation Liam needed. "Then we have to make the best fort ever," he declared, already dragging cushions from the sofa. What followed was an hour of chaotic construction as dining chairs, bed sheets, sofa cushions, and string lights were repurposed into a sprawling structure that took over half the living room. Ashley directed operations from her wheelchair, suggesting structural improvements with an architect's precision, while Liam and Raphael executed her vision. "This is engineering genius," Raphael proclaimed, securing a sheet corner to a bookshelf with a clothespin. "MIT will be calling you with a job offer any day now." Ashley laughed, the sound warming Raphael in ways the autumn chill had begun to penetrate. "I think my resume is missing a few key qualifications." "Nonsense," he replied, meeting her eyes across the half-built fort. "You're the most qualified person I know for—" He paused, suddenly aware of how much meaning hung in the unfinished sentence. "For fort construction supervision," she supplied, her cheeks coloring slightly. "Among other things," he agreed softly. The completed fort was a masterpiece of childhood imagination, a tunnel of sheets illuminated by string lights, furnished with pillows and blankets, with sections tall enough for Raphael to sit comfortably, and pathways wide enough for Ashley's wheelchair. At Liam's insistence, they brought snacks inside and settled in for an impromptu picnic dinner. "This is much better than eating at the table," Liam declared, munching on a peanut butter sandwich cut into triangles. "We should do this every night." "I think Mrs. Hendricks might have something to say about that," Raphael chuckled, his shoulder brushing against Ashley's as they sat side by side, propped against cushions. The casual contact sent a current of awareness through both of them, though neither acknowledged it. As evening deepened, Liam retrieved his favorite storybook from his room, presenting it to Ashley with solemn ceremony. "Will you read to us?" he asked. "Dad does the voices, but you're really good at reading." Ashley accepted the book, touched by the compliment. Outside their fabric shelter, rain pattered gently against the windows as she began reading the tale of a brave knight and his quest to save a kingdom. Liam snuggled between them, his head occasionally nodding as sleep tugged at him. By the story's end, Liam's eyes were heavy-lidded, his responses to the narrative reduced to mumbles. "Time for bed, champion fort builder," Raphael said softly, gathering his son into his arms. "Can Ashley tuck me in?" Liam asked sleepily, his arms automatically winding around his father's neck. Raphael glanced at Ashley, who nodded with a smile. "I'd be honored," she said. In Liam's bedroom, a wonderland of space-themed decor, Raphael set his son on the bed while Ashley wheeled alongside. Together they enacted the bedtime ritual, teeth brushing supervised, pajamas located and changed, into stuffed astronaut properly positioned for sleep duty. As Ashley tucked the blankets around Liam, smoothing them with gentle hands, the boy looked up at her with uncharacteristic seriousness. "Ashley," he said, his voice small but clear, "will you be my mom?" The question hung in the air like suspended crystal, beautiful, fragile, and potentially shattering if mishandled. Raphael, who had been passing by with a cup of tea for Ashley, stopped in the doorway, his heart in his throat. Ashley, speechless, saw the raw hope in the boy's face. Instead of answering directly, she gently asked, "Would you tell me about your mother, Liam?" Raphael stepped in, setting the tea on the nightstand before sitting on the edge of the bed. His fingers unconsciously found Ashley's on the quilt, intertwining with hers as he began speaking. "Your mother was named Sophia," he said softly, addressing Liam but aware of Ashley beside him. "She had curly hair like Ashley's, but it was red, like autumn leaves. She loved to paint and sing, though she wasn't very good at the singing part." This last comment brought a small smile to Liam's face, suggesting it was a familiar story. "She was so excited when she found out you were coming," Raphael continued, his voice gentle but steady. "She painted your nursery with planets and stars, because she said you would reach for them someday." Liam nodded solemnly. "But she got sick when I was born," he added, showing he knew his own history. "There were complications," Raphael confirmed, his thumb unconsciously tracing circles on Ashley's. "And the doctors tried everything, but her heart gave out when you were just 2 days old. She held you, though. She got to tell you she loved you." The simple statement carried such weight that Ashley felt tears prickling behind her eyes. The loss this man and child had experienced was profound, yet here they were, still open to connection, still capable of reaching out. "I've seen pictures, but I never knew the love of a mother," Liam said simply, his gaze shifting between Raphael and Ashley. "And Dad has been alone for so long. He smiles different when you're here." Raphael glanced at Ashley, unable to deny his son's observation. The moonlight streaming through the window illuminated her profile, and he found himself mesmerized by the gentle strength in her expression. Recognizing their shared loss, Ashley maneuvered her wheelchair closer to the bed, leaned forward, and embraced Liam tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Family isn't always blood," she whispered, her eyes meeting Raphael's over the boy's head. "Sometimes it's who stays when everyone else leaves." Liam's arms tightened around her neck, his small body relaxing with the certainty that his question, while not directly answered, had been understood and honored. When he finally drifted off to sleep, Raphael and Ashley retreated from his room, closing the door softly behind them. The emotional weight of the interaction lingered between them, demanding acknowledgement but also too significant for casual discussion in a hallway. "Would you like to join me on the terrace?" Raphael asked quietly. "The rain has stopped, and the night air might be welcome." Ashley nodded, following him through the house to the covered terrace that overlooked the gardens. The post-rain world was hushed and gleaming under the emerging stars, droplets clinging to leaves and petals like tiny constellations. Raphael draped a soft blanket across Ashley's lap before taking a seat beside her wheelchair. Without preamble, he reached for her hand, their fingers interlacing naturally after their unconscious practice during Liam's bedtime story. "I'm sorry if Liam put you in an uncomfortable position," he began, his voice low and earnest. "He's never asked anyone that before, not even women I've dated occasionally over the years." "Don't apologize," Ashley replied, equally soft. "It's a compliment, the highest one he could give." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "He's an extraordinary child, Raphael. You've done an amazing job raising him, especially under such difficult Circumstances. Raphael's eyes reflected starlight as he looked at her. He's been different since you came into our lives. Happier, more settled. I've noticed it at school too. His teacher mentioned he's more focused, more confident. Children respond to stability, Ashley suggested, though her heart quickened at the implication that she had provided something valuable to this family she'd grown to care for so deeply. It's more than that, Raphael insisted gently. It's you specifically. The way you listen to him, really listen. The way you make space for his ideas and emotions without diminishing them. He took a deep breath, as if preparing to dive into deep water. The way you've brought light back into this house. They sat in understanding silence, fingers entwined, neither ready to speak all the emotions that swirled between them, yet neither willing to let go. The night wrapped around them like a protective cloak, giving shelter to feelings too new and precious for full exposure. Finally, Ashley spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I should have died in that car accident with my parents. For years, I wondered why I survived when they didn't. What purpose could possibly be worth the pain of being the one left behind? She turned to face Raphael directly. Sitting here tonight, I think I'm beginning to understand. The simple statement contained multitudes, an acknowledgement of the connection forming between them, a recognition of the healing they'd each found in unexpected places, a tentative step toward possibilities neither had dared imagine months earlier. Raphael lifted their joined hands and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles, the gesture conveying what words might have made too tangible, too soon. Stay, he said simply, not just in the guest house, stay in our lives. Under the vast canvas of stars, Ashley's heart expanded with emotions long dormant. I'd like that, she replied, her voice steady despite the tremulous hope unfurling within her. I'd like that very much. Chapter 7. Healing Begins. The night after Liam's profound question lingered between Ashley and Raphael, like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross fully, yet something had undeniably shifted. Their morning routine carried a new awareness. Small glances held longer. Casual touches seemed more deliberate. When their fingers brushed over the coffee pot, neither pulled away with the haste of previous weeks. After Liam left for school, Raphael found Ashley on the patio, her wheelchair, positioned to catch the morning sun as she worked on her laptop. Working already? He asked, settling into the chair beside her. Just finishing an edit, she replied, closing her computer. One of your referrals, a mystery novel that's actually quite good. Raphael nodded, but his expression suggested other matters occupied his thoughts. Ashley, there's something I'd like to discuss with you. Her stomach tightened instinctively. Despite months in his home, years of conditioning had left her expecting the worst when people used that tone. It's about your health, he continued, apparently not noticing her tension. I've been thinking about what you mentioned when you first arrived. About your condition. My disability, she clarified, her fingers automatically moving to rest. On the wheels of her chair, yes. Raphael leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, bringing him closer to her eye level. You mentioned that early intervention might have made a difference, but your aunt refused to pursue treatment. Ashley nodded slowly. The doctors said there were surgical options when I was younger, but Aunt Meredith considered it a waste of money. By the time I was old enough to advocate for myself, my condition had progressed significantly. That night, after Liam was asleep, Raphael and Ashley talked for hours on the patio under starlight, her wheelchair positioned beside his lounger, their hands occasionally brushing as they gestured while sharing stories. The garden lights cast a soft glow that softened their features, creating an intimate bubble around them. For the first time, she opened up about her disability. The progressive degeneration that had begun with pain and weakness at age 12 and culminated in her full dependence on the wheelchair by 16. "I've never been to a specialist," she admitted, looking down at her unresponsive legs. "My aunt called it a waste of money on damaged goods." Raphael's jaw tightened, his face showing controlled anger at her neglect. He moved from his seat to kneel before her wheelchair, taking both her hands in his. The position made them eye to eye, an equality she rarely experienced with others who usually stood above her. "You are not damaged," he said with such conviction that Ashley's breath caught. "You're the strongest person I've ever met." His thumb traced patterns on her palm as he asked, "Would you consider seeing someone now?" The vulnerability in his eyes matched her own. "I'm afraid," she whispered, "of hope, of disappointment." "You won't be alone this time," he promised. And the way he looked at her made her believe him. A week later, Ashley found herself in the office of Dr. Elena Vargas, one of the country's leading neurosurgeons specializing in spinal conditions. The sleek medical center was a far cry from the county clinic where Ashley had received her initial diagnosis years ago. "Mr. Luca has briefed me on your situation," Dr. Vargas said without preamble, her direct manner somehow reassuring rather than intimidating. "But I'd like to hear your history from you, Ms. Gardner." As Ashley recounted her medical journey, the early symptoms, the diagnosis, the years of deterioration without intervention, she felt Raphael's steady presence beside her, his hand occasionally covering hers when her voice faltered. When the first doctor patronizingly spoke to Raphael instead of Ashley about her condition, Raphael immediately redirected the conversation. "She's the patient, not me," he said firmly, his hand supportive on her shoulder. What followed was a battery of tests, scans, and evaluations spread over several weeks. Each appointment meant time away from work for Raphael, yet he never complained, rearranging his schedule without comment and accompanying her to every consultation. "You don't have to come to all of these," Ashley protested after the third appointment in a week. "You have a company to run." "The company will survive without me for a few hours," he replied simply. "This is important." The day Dr. Vargas scheduled to discuss their findings, Ashley's anxiety reached new heights. She barely spoke during the drive to the medical center, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. Sensing her distress, Raphael pulled into a scenic overlook part-way to the appointment. "Whatever we learn today," he said, turning to face her. "Fully, it doesn't change who you are to me, to us. You know that, right?" Ashley nodded, though the reassurance only partly eased the knot in her stomach. The possibility of hope after so many years of resignation was almost more frightening than continuing as she was. Dr. Vargas's office was minimalist but comfortable, with none of the sterile coldness Ashley associated with medical settings. The surgeon herself sat behind a desk covered with scans and reports, her expression giving nothing away. "Ms. Gardner," she began, "I've reviewed your tests with my team, and I have some news that might surprise you." She paused, making eye contact with Ashley before continuing. "Your condition is not as irreversible as you were led to believe." The words hung in the air like suspended particles of light. Ashley felt Raphael's hand tighten around hers, but she couldn't take her eyes off Dr. Vargas. "What exactly does that mean?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "It means," Dr. Vargas replied, turning her computer screen to show them a series of images, "that with a combination of surgical interventions and intensive physical therapy, you could potentially regain significant mobility. I can't promise you'll run marathons, but walking, even without assistive devices for short distances, is a realistic goal." Ashley's vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. That's not possible," she whispered. "I was told the damage was permanent." "Medical science has advanced considerably in recent years," Dr. Vargas explained, "and frankly, it appears your original diagnosis was incomplete. The care you received was—" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Not the standard that would be expected today." As Dr. Vargas outlined the proposed treatment plan, 3 surgeries spaced over 6 months, followed by intensive rehabilitation, the magnitude of what lay ahead began to sink in. This wasn't a quick fix, but a long, potentially painful journey with no guaranteed outcome. "I'll need time to think," Ashley said finally, overwhelmed by the information. "Of course," Dr. Vargas agreed. "This is a significant decision. But Ms. Gardner," she added, her professional demeanor softening slightly, "patience with your determination tend to exceed our projections. I believe you have an excellent chance of success." In the car ride home, Ashley sat in silence, the folder of information heavy in her lap. Raphael gave her the space she needed, driving slowly to extend the peaceful interlude before decisions needed to be made. "What are you thinking?" he finally asked as they turned onto the private road leading to his estate. "I'm thinking about money," she admitted. "This treatment plan, the surgeries, the therapy, the equipment, it would cost more than I'll earn in a decade." Raphael pulled the car to a stop at a scenic point overlooking the property. "Ashley," he said quietly, "I hope you know that finances are not an obstacle here." She shook her head, her independence asserting itself even in the face of his generosity. "I can't ask that of you, Raphael. You've already done so much." "You're not asking," he interrupted gently. "I'm offering. And before you protest about charity," he continued, seeing the objection forming on her lips, "this isn't about pity or obligation. This is about caring for someone who matters to me, to my family." When Ashley protested about costs in the car ride home, her hands twisting nervously in her lap, Raphael pulled over to the side of the road. Turning to face her fully, he took her hands and kissed her knuckles softly, their first intimate contact that wasn't accidental. "Some things are worth more than money," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "Your independence is priceless." Then, with a vulnerability that matched her own, he added, "And so are you, to me." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither was quite ready to fully articulate. Ashley felt tears spill onto her cheeks, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was offering, not just financial support, but unwavering presence through what would inevitably be a challenging journey. "What if it doesn't work?" she whispered, voicing her deepest fear. "What if I go through all of this and I'm still in this chair?" "Then you'll still be the remarkable woman who brings light into our home," he replied without hesitation. "The chair has never defined who you are to me, to us." That night, after a quiet dinner where Liam sensed the adults had serious matters on their minds and behaved with unusual restraint, Raphael wheeled Ashley around the garden under the stars. He stopped at a specially installed swing wide enough for her wheelchair, a recent addition she'd discovered one morning. As he gently pushed her, she leaned her head back against his chest when he stood behind her. The position felt natural, as if their bodies had always known how to fit together, wheelchair and all. "I'll do it," she said softly, her decision made in the peace of the garden with Raphael's steady presence behind her. The surgeries, the therapy, all of it. Raphael's hands stilled on the swing, then moved to her shoulders, a gentle pressure of acknowledgement and support. "We'll do it," he corrected, "every step of the way." Ashley reached up to cover one of his hands with hers. "I need to contribute somehow," she insisted. "This can't be entirely one-sided." Raphael moved around to face her, kneeling on the garden path to bring them eye to eye once more. In the moonlight, his expression was solemn, yet tender. "If it means so much to you, we'll work something out. But Ashley," he cupped her cheek in his palm, "you've already given us so much just by being here. Sometimes I think you saved us as much as we saved you." The admission, so honest and unguarded, broke the last of Ashley's resistance. She leaned forward until their foreheads touched, a position of such intimacy that words became secondary. They remained that way for several heartbeats, sharing breath and silence under the vast canopy of stars. When Raphael finally pulled back slightly, his eyes searched hers with a question that had been building for weeks. Ashley answered by closing the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. His hands framed her face with gentle reverence as the kiss deepened, becoming a promise neither needed to voice aloud. Later, as Raphael pushed her wheelchair back toward the house, the path illuminated by soft landscape lighting, Ashley felt a sense of peace she'd thought forever beyond her reach. Whatever the surgeries might bring, success, partial improvement, or continuation of her current state, she now faced the future with something she'd never truly had before: hope and the certainty that she wouldn't face it alone. Chapter 8. The journey to standing, the next months, transformed the Luca household into what Liam called Operation Ashley Walks. The first surgery, a complex procedure to release contractures and realign Ashley's spine, had been scheduled for early December, giving them 6 weeks to prepare. Raphael converted a downstairs study into a recovery room, installing a hospital-grade bed and necessary equipment while ensuring the space remained warm and inviting. Mrs. Hendricks stocked the freezer with homemade meals, and Liam appointed himself Chief Entertainment Officer, creating a basket of books, puzzles, and games for Ashley's recovery period. The morning of the surgery arrived with a crystalline winter frost coating the landscape. As Raphael helped Ashley into the car, her face pale with barely concealed anxiety, he pressed a small box into her hand. "What's this?" she asked, surprised by the unexpected gift. "Open it," he encouraged, starting the car. Inside, she found a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny pair of wings. "For courage," Raphael explained, fastening it around her wrist. "Not that you need more of it." The 12-hour surgery was the longest day of Raphael's life. He paced the waiting room, fielded Liam's anxious phone calls from school, and channeled his nervous energy into answering work emails until his battery died. When Dr. Vargas finally emerged, her face showed the fatigue of extended concentration. "She did remarkably well," the surgeon reported. "Better than expected, actually. Her underlying bone structure is strong, which gives us a solid foundation for the next phases." During the first difficult night after surgery, when pain medications weren't enough, Raphael climbed carefully onto the narrow hospital bed and held Ashley against his chest. "Tell me about your favorite place," he whispered against her hair, trying to distract her. They talked until sunrise about imaginary seaside cottages and mountain retreats they would someday visit together, the future tense in their conversation, an unspoken promise. The recovery was grueling. Ashley, accustomed to independence despite her wheelchair, struggled with the temporary increase in dependence. Simple tasks became monumental challenges, and pain was a constant companion. Yet through it all, her determination never wavered. Raphael never left her side, rearranging his work schedule to attend every appointment, sometimes working from a laptop beside her bed. He learned to change her bandages with gentle hands and mastered the art of hospital coffee runs. "Don't you have a company to run?" she asked one morning, finding him asleep in the uncomfortable hospital chair, his hand still holding hers. "I have the right priorities," he answered simply, pressing a kiss to her palm. At home between surgeries, their relationship deepened. He would carry her to the sofa for movie nights with Liam, her body fitting perfectly against his chest. Sometimes he would keep her in his lap rather than transferring her to the couch, their closeness no longer requiring excuses. The second surgery in February focused on nerve regeneration, followed by the third in April addressing muscle reconstruction. Each procedure brought its own challenges, but also incremental improvements that the medical team noted with growing optimism. Throughout it all, Liam remained their steadfast cheerleader. He made colorful progress charts, celebrating each small victory with the uninhibited enthusiasm only a child can maintain. His unconditional acceptance of Ashley's struggles and triumphs created a foundation of normalcy in what could have been an overwhelming medical odyssey. "Ms. Hensley says you're the bravest person she knows," Liam reported one evening, referring to his teacher. "I told her you were even braver than she thinks, because she doesn't see you doing your exercises when they hurt really bad." The simple observation brought tears to Ashley's eyes. She'd tried so hard to shield Liam from the difficult aspects of her recovery, not realizing how perceptive children could be. By early summer, the surgeries were complete, and physical therapy became Ashley's full-time occupation. The guest house was equipped with specialized equipment, and a therapist named Marcus visited daily, his no-nonsense approach perfectly matched to Ashley's determination. "You're going to hate me today," he would announce cheerfully at the beginning of each session, "but you'll thank me in 6 months." The first time Ashley stood between the parallel bars, holding her own weight for just 30 seconds, the achievement felt monumental. Raphael recorded the moment on his phone, his voice thick with emotion as he encouraged her. That evening, they celebrated with a special dinner. Liam proudly presenting a cake he'd helped Mrs. Hendricks bake, decorated with wobbly icing letters spelling "Stood Up." When Ashley took her first assisted steps in physical therapy, clutching the parallel bars with white knuckles, she looked up to find Raphael watching with tears in his eyes. The therapist discreetly moved away, giving them privacy as Raphael moved to stand before her. "Come to me," he encouraged softly, standing just out of reach, arms extended. "I'll catch you if you fall, but you won't fall." When she managed 3 shaky steps before collapsing into his arms, they both cried, his arms holding her upright as she buried her face in his neck. That night, as he carried her from her wheelchair to the garden swing, he confessed something she never expected. "Seeing your determination has healed parts of me I thought would stay broken forever. You've brought life back to this house, to me." In the privacy of twilight, he gently kissed her forehead, then the tip of her nose, and finally deeply her lips, a statement more than a question. Her answer was to draw him closer, wheelchair forgotten, as they finally acknowledged what had been growing between them for months. Summer passed in a blur of therapy sessions, small victories, and deepening intimacy. Ashley progressed from standing frames to walkers, from walkers to crutches, each transition marked by private celebrations with Raphael and exuberant recognition from Liam. The predicted timeline was surpassed repeatedly, Dr. Vargas noting with satisfaction that Ashley's progress was exceptional. What she lacks in initial physical conditioning, she makes up for in sheer willpower, the surgeon observed during a checkup, and having such support at home makes a significant difference. By early autumn, 1 year after Ashley had first come into their lives, she could walk short distances with only a cane. The transformation wasn't just physical. The confident woman who navigated the garden paths with careful steps bore little resemblance to the broken bride who'd been abandoned at the altar. One evening, after a particularly successful therapy session, Raphael found Ashley attempting to climb the stairs to the 2nd floor, something she hadn't yet been cleared to try. "What are you doing?" he asked, alarm evident in his voice as he hurried to her side. "I want to see the view from upstairs," she replied, determination evident in her grip on the banister. "I've lived here for a year and never seen the upper floor." Instead of arguing, Raphael simply stood beside her, one arm hovering behind her back. "One step at a time," he said quietly. "I'm right here." Together they ascended, each step a small victory, until they reached the landing where large windows overlooked the estate. The autumn sunset painted the landscape in golds and ambers, a breathtaking panorama that Ashley absorbed in silent appreciation. "Worth the climb?" Raphael asked, his arm now firmly around her waist. "Worth everything," she replied, and they both knew she wasn't just referring to the view. Chapter 9. Unspoken Feelings. As Ashley mastered walking with a cane, her increasing independence revealed new complexities in her relationship with Raphael. No longer defined by her need for his assistance, they navigated unfamiliar territory. Their bond, forged through medical crises and daily intimacies, now faced the question neither dared to articulate. What were they to each other when caregiver and patient roles no longer defined them? "You're making remarkable progress," Dr. Vargas noted during Ashley's 6-month assessment. "At this rate, you might need only minimal assistance within the year." On the drive home, Raphael was unusually quiet, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Isn't this what we hoped for?" Ashley asked, sensing his tension. "Of course," he replied too quickly. "It's wonderful news." Yet his smile didn't reach his eyes, and Ashley recognized a truth she'd been avoiding. Her increasing independence meant she no longer needed to stay. The foundation of their arrangement, her need for his support, was crumbling beneath the success of her treatment. One crisp October morning, Raphael surprised Ashley by wheeling her to the estate's private pond. He had converted a small rowboat with special stabilizers and a seat designed for her comfort. "I thought you might like to see the water lilies up close," he explained, carefully lifting her from the wheelchair into the boat. As they drifted across the water, his rowing creating gentle ripples around them, he pointed out colorful fish beneath the surface. "I never thought I'd experience this," Ashley admitted, trailing her fingers through the water. "Before you, my world had such tight boundaries." Raphael shipped the oars and moved to sit beside her, the boat rocking slightly with his movement. "I want to remove every boundary," he whispered, tucking a loose curl behind her ear. "I want to show you the world." His kiss tasted of promise and possibility, the gentle sway of the boat matching the rhythm of their hearts. Later, as the afternoon sun warmed them, Ashley rested her head against his shoulder, their hands entwined. "I'm still broken," she whispered, voicing her deepest fear. Raphael tilted her chin up to meet his gaze. "We all are," he said. "That's how the light gets in." Despite these tender moments, Ashley noticed subtle signals of reserve from Raphael. He seemed to hold back just when they grew closest, a guardedness appearing briefly in his eyes before he would change the subject or suggest a new activity. Though the physical aspect of their relationship had developed naturally, conversations about their future remained ambiguous. One evening, during a dinner celebration for her progress, Liam announced with typical childhood directness, "Dad stares at you when you're not looking, Ashley, just like in my storybooks when the prince loves the princess." The table fell silent as Raphael nearly choked on his wine. "Children and their imaginations," he laughed nervously, but his eyes told a different story when they briefly met Ashley's across the candlelight. The moment confirmed what Ashley had sensed, but couldn't articulate. Raphael's feelings ran deep, but something held him back from expressing them fully. While Liam excused himself to prepare for bed, the adults remained at the table, an expectant silence between them. "He has quite the imagination," Raphael finally said, refilling their wine glasses to occupy his hands. "Children often see what adults try to hide," Ashley replied carefully, watching his reaction. Raphael's eyes met hers, a vulnerability there she rarely witnessed. "Sophia's death changed me," he admitted quietly. "When you love someone completely and lose them suddenly, it alters how you view risk." Understanding dawned as pieces fell into place. His hesitation wasn't lack of feeling, but fear of loss. Before she could respond, Mrs. Hendricks entered to clear the dishes, the moment passing like a cloud shadow across the landscape. A breakthrough came unexpectedly through Raphael's mother, Eleanor, whose monthly visit coincided with this period of transition. The elegant older woman had become something of a surrogate mother to Ashley, offering the unconditional affection she'd never received from her aunt. During dinner, Eleanor observed how Raphael watched Ashley demonstrating her improved mobility. To Liam, "You look at her the same way you used to look at Sophia," Eleanor commented later when she and Ashley were alone in the garden. With wonder and terror in equal measure, Ashley nearly dropped her teacup. "He's never spoken much about Sophia, because losing her nearly destroyed him," Eleanor said gently. "Not just losing his wife, but watching helplessly as medicine failed her. For months after, he researched experimental treatments, convinced there must have been something more to try." The revelation illuminated Raphael's devotion to Ashley's treatment in a different light. His involvement wasn't just kindness, it was redemption, a second chance to succeed where he had once failed. Later, Ashley overheard Eleanor in Raphael's study. "That girl loves you and my grandson," she was saying firmly. "Don't let fear keep you from happiness a second time." "It's not that simple," Raphael replied, his voice strained. "What if her progress plateaus? What if she resents me when the limitations become permanent?" "Is that what you're afraid of?" Eleanor challenged. "Or are you afraid that once she's strong enough, she won't need you anymore?" The truth of the observation resonated with what Ashley had begun to suspect. Raphael's restraint wasn't noble sacrifice, but self-preservation, born from the devastating loss he'd experienced with Sophia. That night, after a physical therapy session that left her exhausted, Raphael found Ashley trying to transfer herself from her wheelchair to the bathtub. "Let me help," he offered, his voice gentle. "This isn't how romance is supposed to be," she said, frustrated tears welling. "You shouldn't have to help me bathe." Raphael knelt before her wheelchair. "This is exactly how love is supposed to be," he corrected her, "supporting each other through everything." He pressed soft kisses to her knuckles. "Your wheelchair doesn't diminish how I feel about you. Nothing could." The admission hung between them, not quite a declaration, but more than casual reassurance. Ashley studied his face, seeing the conflict there, desire to move forward warring with fear of loss. "What are you afraid of, Raphael?" she asked directly, tired of the dance they'd been performing. He looked startled, then resigned. "Losing you," he admitted, the simple truth finally spoken. "Loving someone means giving them the power to devastate you. I survived it once. I'm not sure I could again. So instead, you keep us in this beautiful limbo," Ashley observed, stroking his cheek. "Close enough to care deeply, but with an escape route carefully maintained." Later, wrapped in a fluffy robe, she sat on the balcony while Raphael combed, her wet hair, his fingers occasionally massaging her scalp. The intimacy of the moment, domestic and profound, made words unnecessary. When she tilted her head back to look at him, he leaned down to kiss her upside down, both laughing at the awkward angle, yet unwilling to break the connection. "I love you, Raphael," she said suddenly, the words emerging with a clarity that surprised even her. "Not because you rescued me, or funded my surgeries, or built me accessible spaces. I love you because of who you are, how you parent Liam, how you treat Mrs. Hendricks, how you look at the world." Raphael's hands stilled in her hair, his expression a complex mixture of joy and fear. "You don't have to say it back," she continued, softly. "But I needed you to know. I've spent too much of my life not expressing what matters." Instead of responding verbally, Raphael moved around the chair to face her directly. Kneeling before her, as he had so many times, the position that had become symbolic of their unique connection, he took her hands in his. "I've loved you since the blanket fort," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe even before that. But loving you terrifies me, Ashley. Not because of your physical challenges, but because losing you would be like losing the sun after years of darkness. The admission, so honest in its vulnerability, broke through the final barrier between them. Ashley leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. "Life comes with no guarantees," she whispered. "But hiding from love doesn't protect us from loss. It just ensures we lose what might have been." As the autumn moon rose over the estate, Raphael and Ashley remained on the balcony, their conversation moving from fears to hopes, from past wounds to future possibilities. No definitive plans were made, no grand declarations beyond what had already been shared, but something fundamental had shifted. The unspoken had finally been spoken, creating space for whatever might come next. Chapter 10. A Proposal of Equals. On the one-year anniversary of what should have been her wedding day to Jackson, Ashley awoke to find a handwritten note slipped under her door. In Raphael's elegant script it read simply, "Meet me in the garden at sunset. Wear something that makes you happy." The day passed in a haze of anticipation. Liam was suspiciously absent, whisked away to his grandmother's for what Mrs. Hendricks vaguely termed a special project. The household staff moved with an air of suppressed excitement, exchanging knowing looks whenever Ashley entered a room. As twilight approached, Ashley dressed carefully in a knee-length blue dress that complemented her eyes and brought out the highlights in her dark curls. Her progress with walking had been remarkable, but for longer distances she still relied on her wheelchair. Tonight, she decided to embrace both aspects of her journey. She would wear the blue dress that symbolized her new beginning, use a wheelchair to reach the garden, but bring her cane for whatever Raphael had planned. At precisely 6 o'clock, Ashley wheeled herself down the path toward the garden, curiosity building with each turn. As she rounded the final bend, she gasped at the transformation before her. The garden had been illuminated with thousands of twinkling lights cascading from trees and woven through shrubs. Lanterns lined a path of rose petals that had been laid, wide enough for her wheelchair. The air was perfumed with jasmine and roses, and somewhere out of sight, string instruments played softly. Following the illuminated path, Ashley found Raphael standing beneath an arch of roses and jasmine, Liam beside him holding a small box, both in suits. The garden staff had positioned musicians by the pond, their melody creating a perfect soundtrack to the magical setting. "What's happening?" she asked, her heart racing as she stopped her wheelchair before them. Raphael approached slowly, carrying a blanket of silk that he gently draped across her legs, not to hide them, but to honor her with beauty. He knelt before her wheelchair, bringing them eye to eye, a position that had become their symbol of equality. "A year ago, you came into our lives broken by others, but strong within yourself," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "You've healed our family while rebuilding yourself." He took her trembling hands in his. "I fell in love with you while you were in this chair, and I'll love you whether you walk or roll through life beside me." Tears welled in Ashley's eyes as the significance of the date registered fully. What should have been the anniversary of her greatest humiliation had been transformed into something entirely new. "You've shown me what love looks like in action," Raphael continued. "Not just words, but patience and presence and unwavering support." Liam stepped forward, his small face solemn with the importance of his role. "I'm not asking you to be Liam's mother. You already are in all the ways that matter," Raphael said. "I'm asking if you'll be my wife, my partner, my equal in everything." Opening the box Liam proudly presented, he revealed a sapphire ring surrounded by smaller diamonds. "Not traditional," Raphael explained, "because there's nothing traditional about our journey. Sapphire for your strength, diamonds for your multifaceted beauty, and the platinum band for our unbreakable bond." Through happy tears, Ashley reached for his face, her palms cradling his cheeks. "I once believed my wheelchair defined my boundaries," she whispered. "You showed me it only defines my transportation." "Yes, Raphael, 1,000 times yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Liam couldn't contain his excitement any longer, throwing his arms around both of them. "We're going to be a real family," he exclaimed, bringing laughter through Ashley's tears. Using her cane, Ashley stood carefully, determination evident in every movement. Raphael rose with her, his hands hovering near her elbows for support, but allowing her the independence that meant so much. Their kiss was witnessed by a garden full of staff who emerged from hiding places to applaud, and by Liam, who jumped excitedly beside them. The wedding was planned for the following month, an intimate ceremony that reflected their unique journey. Against tradition, Ashley chose to use both her wheelchair and her ability to walk. "My chair brought me to you," she explained to Raphael during planning. "It deserves to be part of our beginning." On a perfect autumn day, with leaves creating a natural carpet of gold and russet, guests gathered on the estate grounds. The ceremony site had been designed with careful consideration. A flat, smooth path allowed Ashley to arrive in her decorated wheelchair, adorned with white roses and trailing ribbons, while a few sturdy steps with elegant handrails led to where Raphael waited. Liam proudly walked beside Ashley down the aisle, occasionally stopping to adjust her trailing veil with serious attention to detail. When they reached the steps, he stood ready to take charge of the wheelchair while Ashley rose, leaning on her cane, decorated with the same white roses and ribbons. Raphael waited at the altar, tears unashamedly tracking down his face at the sight of his bride walking those few significant steps toward him. When she reached him, he took both her hands in his, supporting her as she stood before him. Their vows, written personally, spoke of journeys and challenges overcome. "I promise to be your legs when you need rest, your strength when you falter, and your biggest champion in every victory," Raphael vowed. "I promise to show you that love sees no limitations," Ashley responded, "to be your partner in raising Liam, your comfort in sorrow, and your equal in joy." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Raphael swept Ashley into his arms for their kiss, lifting her off her feet in a gesture that symbolized both support and celebration. The guests erupted in cheers, none louder than Liam, who had been entrusted with the rings and had performed his duty with solemn perfection. The reception that followed celebrated their unique love story. Tables were set at heights, accommodating both standard chairs and wheelchairs. Dance floors were smooth and accessible. Every detail reflected their commitment to creating spaces where everyone belonged. A special moment came when Raphael revealed his surprise. Ashley had progressed enough in physical therapy to stand for their first dance, supported partially by her cane and partially by his arms. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Luca?" he asked, formally offering his arm. With determination shining in her eyes, Ashley stood, the guests falling silent in awe as Raphael guided her to the center of the floor. Their dance was slow and careful, her steps uncertain but her smile radiant. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered against her temple. "It's because of you that I'm standing," she replied, "in every way that matters." As they swayed gently to the music, his arms secure around her waist, guests witnessed not just a marriage, but the completion of a family once fractured by loss, now made whole through unexpected love. Later that night, in the privacy of the honeymoon suite, Raphael carried Ashley across the threshold. Laying her gently on the bed scattered with rose petals, he knelt to remove her special wedding shoes. "You've walked enough today," he said, massaging her feet with tender care. "Let me take care of you now." Their first night as husband and wife was a tender exploration of trust and passion, Raphael's gentle hands and reverent kisses erased any insecurities Ashley had about her body. In the sanctuary of his arms, she found not just physical pleasure but complete acceptance. "I never thought I'd find this," she whispered against his chest as they lay entwined afterward. "A love that sees beyond limitations." "Our story was written in the stars long before we met," Raphael replied, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Some people search their whole lives for what we found in our brokenness." As moonlight spilled across their intertwined forms, Ashley reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. From the cruel rejection at her first wedding to the loving acceptance of this one, from the boundaries of her wheelchair to the new freedom of movement, from isolation to belonging, every step, both literal and figurative, had led her home. In Raphael's arms, with Liam sleeping peacefully down the hall, she had found not just a family, but a future where limitations were acknowledged but never allowed to define what was possible. Their love story, unusual in its beginning but extraordinary in its unfolding, proved that sometimes the most beautiful journeys begin with a broken path. 1 month after the wedding, an unexpected letter arrived from Aunt Meredith. The terse note congratulated Ashley on her marriage. Having seen the announcement in the society pages, there was no apology for the past, no acknowledgement of the harm done, but the final line offered a tentative opening. "Should you wish to visit sometime, my door is not closed to you." Ashley considered the olive branch carefully before drafting her response. "Thank you for your note," she wrote. "While I'm not ready for a visit, I am open to correspondence. Perhaps we can get to know each other as the adults we now are, rather than as guardian and ward." She included several wedding photos showing her standing beside Raphael, a subtle demonstration of how far she had come without her aunt's support. Their exchange of letters, initially formal and cautious, gradually evolved into a monthly correspondence that, while never warm, provided a measure of reconciliation neither had expected. Epilogue. 2 years later, Ashley's life had settled into a rhythm that once seemed impossible. Her physical therapy continued, though less intensively, and she had published her first children's book, a story about a girl in a wheelchair who discovers she can fly in her dreams. The book, illustrated by Liam with surprising talent, had found a small but appreciative audience. On a perfect spring afternoon, she stood unaided at the edge of the estate's pond, watching Raphael teach Liam to row the boat they had once shared. During their courtship, her cane rested nearby, still necessary for longer walks, but increasingly unused in daily activities. The medical journey had been long, with setbacks and victories, but Dr. Vargas had recently declared the treatment a remarkable success. Ashley would never have the mobility of someone who hadn't experienced her condition, but she had surpassed every projection and expectation. As she watched her husband and son on the water, their laughter carrying across the surface, Ashley's hand drifted to her slightly rounded stomach, their newest blessing, still months from arrival, but already deeply loved. Life wasn't perfect. Some days her legs refused to cooperate, sending her back to the wheelchair she still kept nearby. Some nights, pain from old injuries and new healing woke her. But those moments were balanced by countless others filled with joy, purpose, and the profound knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged. When Raphael looked up and caught sight of her watching them, his face lit with a smile that still made her heart skip. With a few instructions to Liam about the oars, he guided the boat back to shore and stepped out, crossing the short distance to where she stood. "Happy?" he asked simply, his arm slipping around her waist. Ashley leaned into his embrace, watching as Liam carefully secured the boat the way his father had taught him. "Beyond words," she replied. And she was, not because her life was free from challenges, but because she faced them surrounded by love that had never seen her as broken, only beautifully human.